Good afternoon. It's the 1st of March already, 2021, and I'm going back to my review of various agencies and the pros and cons of those agencies. And I've had a request to do one on the Customs Border Patrol, but this one's going to be on another uniformed federal agency, and then I'm going to do the Homeland Security ones after this. And this particular agency differs from other agencies in that it is not part of the executive branch of the United States government. It's actually part of the legislative branch of the government, and it is the United States Capitol Police. They've been in the news quite a bit. They're hiring like crazy. So it is a wide open job. I'm going to be going over the qualifications for it in a moment, but first the basic duties. What do the Capitol Police do? Well, they are a uniformed police agency that secures the Capitol and Capitol Hill in the District of Columbia. It pays very well, and there is a lot of overtime. It is not a Fair Labor Standards Act exempt job, which means that you get paid holiday pay, Sunday pay, night differential, and overtime. And they do get a lot of overtime right now. There are currently about 2,000 officers on that agency. They've been in the news quite a bit lately because they weren't prepared maybe on the 6th of January. But the job, first of all, I have friends, a fellow deacon who is a retired Capitol Police officer. So I'm going to give you the lowdown on what they do. Principally, it's a security job. Okay, it's a protective job. You are not going to be out making arrests. You may go through your entire career without making arrests. You're going to be spending it standing at a post, your day standing at a post in uniform. So this might be something you are really looking for. And on the other hand, it might be something that you don't want at all. That's up to you. For me personally, if I was in my early 20s, I wouldn't want it. Now I'm 61. It would be just great for me at age 61. But again, I'm 61, So it differs on what you've done, what you want to do. But again, be certain that you know in applying for this job that it's a protective services job. It's a security type job, even though it's called police. And yes, they can make federal arrests on Capitol Hill, but principally what you're going to be doing is standing post at various locations in the United States Capitol and throughout Capitol Hill, the whole complex. Now, having said that, once a person finishes their initial several years of experience, they're able to apply for other duties, such as protective details for specific members of Congress. We know that a few years ago, you may remember it, you may not, a madman opened fire on the Republican congressional members' softball team, critically injured a number of them, but was taken out by members of the Capitol Police detail who, thank God, were present. Okay. On other occasions, there's been instances where they've had to, just recently, the so-called assault, or it was really just a riot that got out of hand, and they really weren't prepared for it on the Capitol. So what are some of the benefits to being in this agency? Number one, the pay. It's very good pay. Number two, it's got great retirement benefits. Number three, it's not particularly dangerous. Okay. Number four, you get to rub elbows with a lot of important people. Those may or may not be things that you want. What are some of the disadvantages? Number one, it's in D.C. Okay, so if you don't live in the D.C. area, I can tell you, because I do, this is kind of an expensive area to live in. Okay, the housing is fairly high. Not as bad as L.A. or New York or something like that, but it's fairly high. You're going to have to live a significant distance outside of D.C. And commute probably every day, especially if you have a family, because your decent schools are going to be further away from the District of Columbia. That's about the most politically correct way I can think of saying that. The schools that you would want to send your children to are out in the suburbs a little bit, and that's going to be expensive. The housing is expensive here. When I moved here in '97, it was the most I ever paid for a house, and that was $150,000 in 1997. Now the houses are worth a lot more, But and I was a GS-14 in the government when I moved there, when I moved here rather. So it's an expensive area, but if you live in Maryland, D.C., Virginia, in the commuting area, well, then there's no cost to you at all. If you're single, you can probably do this without a lot of problems. You can just make a move and live in an apartment or whatever. If you're married and have no children, it probably isn't a problem. If you have children and that and you want a house, that might be a problem. If you've been invested in an apartment for a while, that might be a problem. The basic qualifications for the job is you have to be 21 years of age, no older than 37 at the time you are appointed. It's a federal law enforcement job, so it has the cutoff age of your 37th birthday, unless you're a military veteran. But it's the same as every other federal agency. This job requires a high school diploma, so you don't need a college degree. The screening requirements, there's basically two phases of screening. Phase one is a written exam, which can be done online. It's a fairly simple exam. It tests your verbal, arithmetic, and reading skills. And it's similar, I think, to the military ASVAB. I've looked at their practice questions, and I mean, if you can't pass this, you really need to do some studying, okay? And all you have to do is pass it. It's not competitive. You need a 70% on all areas. So you have to know your basic arithmetic, you have to know basic grammar, and and your reading comprehension needs to be up there, so they can see that you'll be able to get through their academy. There's a physical fitness test, which involves a 1.5 mile run, a 300-yard run for speed, push-ups. So that's not too tough. Pretty much the same as any other agency. There's an online, this is all done virtually. The initial interview is done online, and so is your test. So you don't have to travel to DC to do that. And then there are phase two of testing, which is a psychological polygraph, psychological polygraph, background investigation, and another interview with command staff of the United States Capitol Police. So that's the second part of the interview. We'll look at the USA Jobs Job Vacancy in a moment. What are some of the downside of working on that agency? Well, number one, boredom. Boredom. You're going to probably be assigned a magnetometer, a security post at the Capitol building when you first come on. So that'll be screening people who come in, empty your pockets, go through the metal detector, go back. Except the members of Congress and senators, they don't have to go through it, and you're supposed to learn their faces by memory. And if you don't know their face and you make them go through a metal detector, you'll hear about it. So you can kind of see where this is going. Secondly, your leadership is very political. I mean, in every agency, the agency head is appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate. In this case, the leadership is appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, okay? It's a young lady named Yogananda Pittman. So I've seen her on a couple of things saying that, well, we can't hold the State of the Union, and we can't hold it because people are going to blow up the Capitol, which, if you believe that, again, it's a political agency. The leadership is political. I won't go any further than that. There may be other reasons why they're not going to hold the State of the Union other than that. I mean, you've got the military there. You've got a fence. That place is secured right now like Fort Knox. Okay, nobody's going to do that. What they're concerned with, they're concerned with other things, which I won't get into. But sometimes when you have very elderly people giving speeches, you don't know what they're going to say, so there you go. So you have a very political leadership. You have to deal with people whose lives are politics, 535 of them and their staffers. Their whole lives are politics, and you have to be the voice of reason, the voice of security. And just having dealt with congressional delegations when I worked in DEA, I don't like it. I didn't like dealing with these people. Some people love it. I don't like it. I don't like politicians, generally speaking. Not I don't like them. It's not I don't like them personally. It's just that I don't like the attitude that they give off. Okay, so that's just me. That's totally different. This is my experience. Your experience, what you might want, might be totally different. So if you're looking for a slower job that pays a lot, you can work as many hours as you want, this is the place. Okay, if you want to do a lot of overtime, make a six-figure salary, this is the place. If you don't want really any physical danger, this is the place. If you don't want to have to deal with court time, this is the place. If you want to do all those other things, make arrests, kick down doors, deal with dangerous people, be a cop, this really isn't the place. Okay, this really isn't the place. So now we will look at the usajobs.gov website and take it from there. Okay, and this is the current job vacancy announcement available on usajobs.gov for the United States Capitol Police. It opened today. It closes at the end of the month, but I'm sure will be open longer. They are accepting applications to the U.S. public, U.S. citizens, nationals, or those who owe allegiance to the U.S., which is, as far as I know, you don't have to be a United States citizen, but then it clarifies it, says it has to be United States citizen. So apparently if you're a resident alien, you cannot apply. You have to be at least 20 years and 6 months of age. There's a full field background. It starts at $64,000 and some change to 64. Yeah, basically the same thing. That's the starting salary. $64,173 a year. But of course that does not include your holiday pay, night pay, Sunday pay. Sunday pay is time and a quarter. Night pay is time and a tenth. Holiday pay is double time. You don't get your holidays, you just get the pay. You don't get a makeup day. So if you work July 4th, you work July 4th. And, you get double pay for that. So that's a good deal. Or it might be a good deal, or maybe it's not a good deal. But for me, it's a good deal. I would want it. I'd rather have the pay than the holidays, and you get your 2 days off. And then, of course, you get your overtime pay. Everything is in D.C. There is no relocation expenses authorized, okay? And this is what they say they do, okay? They enforce the federal and District of Columbia laws, okay? Yes, technically they do. Here's what they really do. They physically protect the United States Capitol complex, building and grounds, members of Congress, visitors, and staff from threats of crime. 3, take charge of accidents and crime scenes. So if there's an accident on Capitol Hill, you're the person who responds to it. If there's a crime scene on Capitol Hill, you would do that. Here's one thing that you will do. Observe, stop, and question suspicious persons. You'll prepare reports and possibly testify in court. Here's a big one. You'll perform protective services, safeguarding federal-owned buildings and property. And upon successfully completing probation and your training, you're eligible for future competitive promotions. And you can also be assigned to the Special Operations Divisions, like a SWAT team, I guess, the Canine Explosives Detection Team, the Containment Emergency Response Team, the Dignity Protection Division, the Intelligence Section, the Criminal Investigation Section, the Threat Assessment Section, and the Hazardous Incident Response Division. The only thing they don't have is the Midget Protection Team. No, I shouldn't have said that, but they got everything for a 2,000 officer agency. You don't have to travel. You can be promoted several times up. And the first thing that they will do is your pre-employment screening. You'll complete a personal history statement. And they will enter this into the Peace Officer Background Investigation Tracking System, which I guess is an automated system used for your background investigations with participating agencies. So if another agency has done a background on you, or you're working for another agency, they'll get the data from your previous background. And then there's an orientation session, which is done online. A written exam, which is done online, teaches reading or tests reading, grammar, and basic math. You need to have a 70%. You can get a copy of the practice test online, but trust me, if you're having difficulty with it, it's very similar to the test that you take to join the military as an enlisted man. It's not difficult at all. A pre-employment interview online. Okay, so all of that is done using video conferencing systems, and you need a desktop or a laptop computer. Okay, and if you pass those first three things, the orientation, the written, and the pre-employment interview, then you go to the examination phase, which includes a psychological, which I've done a video on. You can look up that and see what that entails. A medical exam, just basically, your basic physical exam. A polygraph, and what they're going to be interested in is drug usage, for sure. Okay, prior drug usage, and the standards for this are pretty much the same for the federal system in general. No drug usage, illicit drug use in the past 3 years. Even if you live in a state where marijuana is legal, and I'm putting that in quote marks, it's still illegal. So no marijuana use in the last 3 years, and anything beyond experimental use before that. Any hard drug use, anything other than marijuana in the last 10 years, and anything beyond experimental use of hard drugs beyond 10 years. The physical readiness test, a 1.5 mile run, a 300-meter run, and a push-up test. And then an oral board, which is a behavioral-based interview before a panel of U.S. Capitol Police supervisors. And it draws on previous work-related and life experience that are relevant to questions. So look at my previous one on oral interview panels. And you won't be required to travel to D.C. for this. You can do it through a computer. So that's good. And then there's the final thing, which is the background. They do this last because it's the most expensive. And they do a review of your employment history, residence, personal references, criminal history, credit record, and academic record. And that's about it. I mean, you have to have a driver's license. You have to be registered with the draft. You have to have a high school diploma. And that's about it. There's no security clearance. It's just a law enforcement background investigation. So there you have it with the job vacancy announcement, which is found on usajobs.gov, and then type in U.S. Capitol Police. Okay, the training offered, or required, I should say, for U.S. Capitol Police, and apparently this applies to even people coming from other law enforcement agencies. The new recruit enters on duty at the Capitol, and then they are sent to Cheltenham, Maryland for 1 week, where they get some sort of orientation. Probably that's just your in processing, and from there they go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, which I will tell you from personal experience, having been there, it's a nice place. It's not far from Savannah. It's just, you fly into Jacksonville, Florida, but I have just good memories of the place. I was there for a couple weeks for some DEA training. But you will be there for 12 weeks, and it's basically your general police academy type stuff. Officer safety, communications and interviewing people, constitutional law, criminal law, arrest techniques, defensive tactics, firearms, physical security, driver training, which I don't know why you'll need that because you're not going to be doing a lot of driving. But anyway, you'll get that. VIP protection. Then after that, you go through another 13 weeks. You go back to your place of hire, the Capitol, and then you go to Cheltenham, Maryland for 13 weeks of specialized training. And you start off as a private. They have a military rank system. So there you have it. So it's 26 weeks of training, really 27. That's a lot of training for what you're going to be doing. So, be prepared to do a lot of training. That's all I've got to say. And you'll probably be in very good shape when you get out of the academy. I don't know anyone who's gone through it recently, but I can't imagine it's, it's if you can get through a police academy or a corrections academy, I'm pretty sure you can get through this academy. Okay, I don't think it's, and they certainly want you to pass. This isn't one of these things where it's not the Navy SEALs where they're trying to screen you out or anything like that. So, but do be prepared for the fact that it's a lot of training involved. So you've heard a lot about the Capitol Police, their requirements. Hopefully you could have read the requirements on the job announcement, but if not, just go to usajobs.gov, type in United States Capitol Police, and you'll see it clear as day. Again, you don't need a college degree, you just need high school diploma. High school diploma, you're good. You got to pass a written test. I don't think there's a lot of prior experience or resume writing that you have to worry about. This isn't a special agent job, it's a protective job. It's a security job, so as long as you can pass the interview, you're good. So this is an entry-level job. Again, you're not a police officer like you would be if you're in the DC police or the Chicago police or the New York police. That may be a good thing, it may not be a good thing. Depends what you want. So, do I give it a thumbs up or thumbs down? It depends on what type of person you are. It's like saying, what branch of the service do you recommend? I was in 3 branches of the military. I'm going to do one on which one I recommend. I was in the Reserve Army, but the regular Navy and the regular Marine Corps, never in the Air Force, which I wish I had been. But, it depends on your personality. It depends what you want to do. So, if you want to do protective work, if you want to do security work, if you want to earn a lot of overtime and make money, this is a good job for you. If you like to work midnights on a post in the Capitol building without much going on, this is your job, okay? This is what you want to do. Now, once in a blue moon, you'll have people rush the Congress, the Senate, the Capitol. Okay, and here is the I can't say it's last month, it's actually January the 6th, people inside the Capitol, and I don't know, some of them were out of hand for sure. One exactly an insurrection. They have a lot of riot gear. Here's one good benefit that you are going to have with this agency as opposed to others, and it is this, okay? Politicians usually want to defund the police except the police that protect them. And these police protect them. So they don't want to defund you. If you're on this agency, they're going to hire a lot more of you because they are scared. They're scared of a bunch of, basically just demonstrators. But it doesn't take a lot to scare Congress people. And they are scared. And they will spend, spare no expense in hiring Capitol Police. So, but if you live in these major cities and you live in dangerous neighborhoods, well, that's a totally different thing. You're on your own, I guess. But these guys are definitely not on their own. They have a fence around this Capitol with concertina wire on top and still National Guard down there this late because they're scared of this guy. So go figure. Okay, so there you have it. I don't think it'll happen again in my lifetime and probably not in yours. But so, are you going to have these fantastic stories to tell your grandkids? No. Basically, it's a job, but it's a well-paying job, and it's relatively safe compared to other law enforcement, and it's federal. So that means you get the same benefits that DEA gets. When you're 50 years old with 20 years, you're done. Now, my buddy, he had retired from the U.S. Air Force as an enlisted man. He's a Catholic deacon. And he came into the job a little bit older. He was over 37 when he got hired. But the day he had his 20 years, they came looking for him and they retired him right there. So once you have your 20 years in, you're done. And, he had no gripes about it. He used to tell me stories about certain members of the certain member of the Senate who, he had to escort her on when the guy was inebriated. But, hey, again, these are kind of personal things. I'm not going to put it on an internet or anything like that because these people do have personalized, but you could be assigned to one of their details. It's like Nancy Pelosi will have a detail as Speaker of the House. She's number 3 in line for the presidency. So you have to, she'll have a detail, and that might be good, that might not be good. Depends on you, depends what you want to do. Depends, how much you want to put up with. I never liked working on any kind of security detail. Back in the day, DEA administrators had security details, and certain administrators being assigned to their detail was like a death sentence. It was not fun. It was not fun. All the people did was complain about it, and I was never assigned to it, so thank God for that. But hopefully this has given you some insight into what they do. And my next one, I'll start a series on the Department of Homeland Security, starting with the Border Patrol and Customs, CBP, which is a whole different agency than it was back in the day. So, all right, hopefully this has been informative and somewhat enjoyable, and hope to see you on the next podcast.